And we are live. Nick Sutrich is a friend and former colleague who made a similar jump as me last year, going from freelance to full-time tech junkie. And now he's a full-time tech writer, and he's here to tell us all about the Samsung Galaxy S22 Ultra and how much he hates that goddamn phone. Nick, how you doing this afternoon?
I hate it. I hate it a little less this week than I did last week. So,
well, that's good.
There's that.
That's good. Yeah, I was listening to the Android Central podcast, which, by the way, nice relaunch. That was a very cool little personnel change that you had over there. All of you are doing quite well. So I was listening to your podcast on the S22 over there, and yeah, I was gonna say you weren't really much of a fan, but apparently that opinion has changed. So. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, as far as the podcast signal.
Oh, I'm putting you on the spot here, buddy.
No. It's good. Like you got the show notes, and then you have what actually ends up going on in the show, and then you get the time, and everyone's like, I'm done talking about this. Let's just end it.
Right.
And I feel like we ended up focusing a bit more on the negative than I originally intended, but
Understood.
It kind of happens sometimes, especially when you're just chatting about stuff. That pops up with the phone. A lot of times negative is the first thing you think of.
That's right.
And you have that collective experience sort of leads you to that in your conversation, and then it all goes downhill from there.
Yeah. But I was going to say, for those of you not watching the video, Cliff Thomas is also here. Good evening, Cliff. And my dogs are barking, so give me a second. Shut up, assholes! Holy shit, that worked. Okay, I think that actually worked. And for those of you who are not watching the video feed, Cliff Thomas is also here. Good evening, Cliff. How are you?
Good evening. As usual, I am tired, and I am consuming caffeine so that I don't fall asleep on the podcast.
Yeah, we definitely don't
does
want you to.
Does Diet have caffeine?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
For some reason, I thought it was caffeine free.
No,
there's a Diet caffeine free Diet Coke. I mean,
maybe that's what I'm thinking of. There's so many different Coke. Somethings. Add a word here.
Tell me about it.
I highly recommend the new Starlight flavor that Coke just introduced, which is available in a zero sugar flavor. It tastes kind of like cinnamon toast crunch combined with a little bit of vanilla and Coke.
Okay. All right.
Huh.
I can see why they would have sent that to Iron Gate, Virginia to test out. Anyway,
I don't even know what to say to that. Like, what does that even mean?
Well, I think the small town guys outnumber the big city boys here, because Nick is not exactly a booming metropolis either. So I guess I better keep these small town jokes to a minimum this time around. But anyway, why don't we just not talk about small towns at all, and let's talk about big phones instead? Nice. Because the Samsung Galaxy S22 Ultra is the spiritual successor to the Galaxy Note, basically. And we've said that on the podcast here before. That's not a startling revelation. But Nick, I wanted to start off with you, and I just wanted to get your high level view. Like, what's your overall impression of the S22 Ultra? And this is your opportunity to start talking positively.
There you go. So, with Samsung phones, I tend to really like the Samsung software has gotten unbelievably better over the last couple of years.
It was a low bar, but yes.
What's that?
It was a low bar, but you are right.
Yeah, well, that's true. But I mean, I would say, and I'm pretty sure very few people would argue that, it's easily the best version of Android right now. UI wise, I mean, features wise, it doesn't feel like a crammed mess anymore. You can add things in there as you want. Just generally, it's a good experience.
I'm going to put it in a vote for the Pixel experience, but yeah, okay, we'll go with that.
Now, granted, I prefer the look of the Pixel UI, but if I could get the Pixel UI with Samsung features, that would be, I'd say, pretty much the ideal phone for me. So,
okay,
I mean, you could always theme the thing. They have a gajillion different themes. You download, you download Good Lock, and then you put Theme Park on there, and I mean, I'm sure you could get it pretty close to a Pixel phone. I actually haven't tried that yet, but now that I say it, I'm pretty sure I'm going to try it. So.
I didn't even understand.
Challenge
what you
accepted.
Said, so it's fine. No. Honestly, with Samsung, like the Samsung experience, the only thing that I really don't like still is the app launcher, and I've said this a number of different times.
Yeah.
I don't like the side-scrolling app launcher just because it's like, God, I'm like bashing my phone all over the place. Yeah, it's like flip, 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 flip. And then you get to Z and you can't even go around to A. That's the part that bugs me. And then, I'm looking for a Google app, and it's just like, where is this Google? Oh, it's in the Google folder. It's all the way back here.
Google folder, yeah. Or the random, I love the random Samsung folder because not all Samsung apps are in that one. So, I'll go to look for one, and I'll be like, oh, it's not in this folder. It's in the regular app drawer. And then, there's, of course, the other way around. You're like, oh, of course. It's in the regular app drawer because last time I looked for something, it was there. Nah, it's in the Samsung folder.
Yeah, it's in the Samsung folder. And then there's Oh, go ahead.
The one that I don't understand as far as apps that are in the Samsung folder, because I would think it's something that a lot of users would like to have quick access to, even from just moving into the phone, would be the Files app. Why is that buried in that folder? Why? It's almost like a system level app. Like, why is it there?
Yeah, that's a little weird.
Yeah, well, and it's also kind of weird that Samsung's still using its own Files app when Google Files is there, and Samsung has Google-fied pretty much every other stock app except for like that and Notes, and Samsung is never going to use Google Keep. We got
nor do I want them to.
Well, sure, but we got a pretty clear demonstration of that fact at the Samsung Unpacked event when they kept going on and on and on about Notes. But yeah, so that, and then there's always the random treat when you're looking for a Samsung app that's not in the Samsung folder, and as far as you can tell, it's not in the launcher either. But when you search for it, sure enough, there it is.
Yeah, because it has a weird name or something like that. I've done that several times now. I'm pretty sure the Files app is one, because going between the Pixel and the Samsung phone, I can't remember right now what it's called on either of them. I think Samsung is My Files or something. And then on Pixel, you have to go, I don't know if it's Downloads. I'm like, I'm going to look now because I can't really remember. But I swear it's like Downloads or something. Maybe it's just Files.
I think it was just called
My
Files.
It is just Files, yes. Yeah. That is correct.
Yeah,
but in any case, they're two different things, and I always screw them up, so I have to just search for Files.
Just search for Files, and it's fine. Just
fine,
search
whatever.
for everything, and it's fine.
Or just replace your home screen launcher and be happy.
Right. Well, there's always that too.
So here's a weird thing that I don't know why Samsung hasn't fixed this yet, other than maybe they just want to force you into using their launcher. On both this phone, the Fold 3, basically any recent Samsung phone that is running Android 12, if you're on a different launcher than the stock one, and you go to swipe up, so you have to be using gesture navigation, there is this delay. You can't click anything for like a good, I don't know, half a second. If you try to, it will randomly open one of the previous apps that you have launched.
Wait, what?
Yes, exactly. It is an Android 12 bug.
Okay.
It is not really a problem on the Pixel anymore, but it was an issue on the Pixel 6 when it first came out. And that still has not been fixed on, at least all the Samsung phones I have. And it's a very annoying bug, especially when, you're expecting this thing to be super quick as it always is. And then all of a sudden you click and you're like, what the heck did it just do? I'm in a different app than I was expecting.
That sounds delightful. I haven't installed a third-party launcher on my S22 yet, and I don't know that I will. I think I would say that the decision that Samsung has made with One UI, and I guess it's been like this for a while, where you, especially if you use gestures, where you bring up the app drawer, which is an up swipe, and then everything else is left and right. Why? It's so unintuitive, and I don't know.
Yeah, it's weird.
Are there any other?
Well, and especially since they put that Samsung Pay drag handle down at the bottom by default. So
that's the first thing I turn off on every Samsung phone.
Well,
but
sure,
then again, gestures are not enabled by default on a Samsung phone, which is another weird one. It's still the 3-button thing by default, and I don't even think it's in the initial setup to configure gesture navigation. I'd have to go through it again to make sure, but I'm pretty sure that's the case.
Yeah, I think what I brought my stuff over from my old phone, and so I think it brought that choice in as a result. But yeah, I think you're right.
I am going to use this as an opportunity to give a major shout out to Samsung Switch, who, because I use Samsung just like Cliff did, I'm sure. I use Samsung Switch to bring all my stuff over from the S21 FE over to the S22, and not only did it automatically do the gesture navigation, but it also repopulated all of my folders, which was just chef's kiss.
Yes.
Thank
No,
you
I have to
so
totally
much.
agree. Totally agree.
And but at the same time, I'm also going to give Google crap for it, because that should happen regardless of where you import your backup from anyway. Because
Sure.
we'll see. I mean, you're probably not like me. I have folders I have all 180 of my apps put into folders. So when I have to rebuild those folders, that's really annoying.
Yeah,
especially
I use
using a dozen phones every year. That's really annoying.
Right. I'm trying to remember what this launcher is that I use. I'll look while we're talking here, but I use a different launcher on my Pixel phones, and then on my Fold or whatever else I'm using. And Nova, that's it. So I use Nova launcher. I like that because you can back up your settings, put them on Google Drive, and then whatever phone I'm on, I just import that. Typically the worst thing I have to do is add my widgets, because sometimes, especially when you go from a phone that has Android 11 to Android 12, you have different widgets for whatever reason. Some widgets only allow you to Android 12.
You're like a unicorn. You're one of the few people I know that actually uses widgets on an Android phone.
I wasn't going to say anything, but yeah.
I do. I've had a widget page. I have my home screen, which is clean. There's nothing but a clock or a weather app on it or whatever. Then I swipe over for my widgets because I like my wallpaper.
Okay. All right. That's legit.
I'm a wallpaper snob, I guess, if that's a thing.
No, that's fine. I mean,
a thing.
I kind of went the other way with it, where I only have one page ever, and it's got all my folders and my, the only widget I ever use is the Google one, so I can search. And occasionally I'll use a weather widget, which actually, why am I using that weather widget? I really should turn that off. But anyway, but everything else is just all I've got everything all on one screen. I can't hold it in front of that's all I ever use.
Okay.
So.
And I feel your pain with the folders. If I didn't have that import, or like you said, Samsung Smart Switch, I think it is.
Yeah.
It would be a nightmare to have to rebuild all those folders, because I have a bunch in the drawer on the bottom. It's all it's like phone icon, folder, something else. I don't remember now. Oh, Chrome.
See,
now I switched.
I even have my phone icon in a folder. So
there you go.
So yeah. But anyway, so all right. So let's talk more specifically about the S22 Ultra. We'll start off with the design, because usually people talk about the hardware first. So this definitely harkens back to Note architecture,
for sure,
and which is wonderful for me, because up until now I've never had a Note. So this is actually my first exposure to the Note culture, and it's very boxy. It's not. It's most smartphones that I use have much wider radius edges on the corners.
Yep.
So it tends to dig in a little bit, but honestly, I don't mind it all that much. So how are you feeling about that whole design language? And actually, Cliff, I want to get your notes on that too, being a designer.
So, as somebody who bought the original Galaxy Note, has had most of the Notes around, the last time I actually owned a Note was the Note 9. And I know over the years, the phones had become boxier and boxier. I never used the Note 10 or the Note 20. For more than a few minutes, right? I didn't get to review those because I was on hiatus basically from reviews during those times. And then coming back to this as a Note device, I'm like, I hate these square corners even more than I hated the ones before, because it's literally a 90-degree angle. I mean, the radius on this is obviously, I'm like trying to figure out which way to aim this. This is like a perfect half circle, which is fine.
Right.
But this is a complete 90-degree angle. And when you're holding this in your palm, that crap hurts. This is I mean, I know this is not a one-handable phone. Again, I'm trying to aim it in the camera here. I can't reach with my thumb any higher up than maybe halfway, right? Like this is
Yeah.
not a one-handable phone. But
Right.
still, if I'm just holding this and I'm reading something, I'm typically holding it like this and I'm, scrolling with the other finger. And after a few minutes of it digging into my palm, I'm like, man, this is not my favorite phone design. That's for darn sure.
Okay. See, I mean, I know Samsung kind of went with the squared off design to make it more like notepad ish, as
Right.
from what I understand. So like I can kind of see where they're coming from, and I was actually a little afraid to mention that because I thought like Note purists would be all like, no, it has to be square because that's the Note and blah blah blah. So yeah, okay, I'm glad to hear we're on the same page as that. I'm like I have a case on mine, which does round it off a little bit and probably makes it a little bit more comfortable to hold. I mean, this phone is slippery as all get out.
Oh yeah,
So,
there's that too.
like, and, you want to say it's not a one-handed phone. I totally agree with that, but it's more because I'm afraid I'm going to drop it rather than, because I can do the thumb gymnastics that I need to in order to get like where I need to go. I hope I don't have to do it often while I'm using the phone, but still, like I can do the pinky stretch and all that, so I can but
right,
yeah. This thing is so freaking slippery. It's a little crazy. Flipping over the phone though, how about how you feeling about the camera bump back there? Do you like the fact that it's all integrated into like one flat bottom back except for these protrusions, or did you prefer more of like the S21 Ultra design language where they built that camera module into the edge of the phone? And I'm going to go with Cliff first here because I've asked Nick the question first both times so far.
Look at you just sneaking me in. I wasn't quite prepared. I thought you were asking about the integration with the rings around the camera versus having it all in a module.
Yeah, like the solid frame module that they had
right.
in the last generation.
I will say I feel like in general aesthetically the phone is a little more balanced. Not having that module on the one side, I don't feel like because it is so far up, it makes it handle any differently. It definitely is a distinctly different phone from the rest of this year's S line, in that it does feel and handle like the last couple of Notes that I've had. I will agree with you as an aside in saying that it is a very slippery phone. Although what Samsung phone hasn't been slippery over the last 2 or 3 years? I mean, I had and returned a Flip 3, which was even worse than this. My goodness. That was a phone that I couldn't leave on a surface for more than a few seconds without worrying about it being on the floor. And definitely I needed a case with it. But yeah, I mean, it's a biggin. And I mean, for me, it's definitely a two-hand phone for most things. I'm even with a case on, still afraid of dropping it. I've heard or read some horror stories on Twitter about people that have dropped it from like 18 inches and shattering the back glass, even though it's Victus on both sides. So yeah,
that's
I think that was Max Weinbach. Actually, I could be wrong, but
that wouldn't surprise me at all.
No,
wouldn't surprise me.
Destroyer of phones. It's like I'm trading this in, and it looks like he's been using it as a skateboard. I'm like,
yeah, if there's anybody that's going to durability test a phone in real life, it's him.
Yeah, probably. So, Nick, I saw you grabbing another phone off to the side there. Was that the S22?
This is the S22 Plus. I have to think about these names sometimes.
Right.
So this camera hump, way better. 100% better.
Yeah?
Yeah, I mean, at least from a reviewer's perspective, every time I pick this thing up, I have to like wash it off to get all of the lint and crud off of the lenses.
Yeah.
And like I'm sure for like a normal person that's not a big deal, but when I got to take pictures of this thing all day, I have to like spend 10 minutes in Photoshop cleaning the dust off of it, even after I wash it off. Like, it drives me nuts.
I mean, that's me for every device, but yeah.
This is definitely more prone to it than usual. It's like Huawei devices back in like the P20, P30, they were really bad with that too. And it was kind of the same reason. They had those protruding lenses, and it's just you pull it out of your pocket and it just grabs every bit of lint in there that you didn't realize was in there. If you put a case on it though, it completely solves the problem. And it's one of those things where it's like, okay, yeah, this design is, I think, more aesthetically pleasing. It's more practical. It's just better overall. But most people put a case in their phone, and you don't even see the thing, and nobody cares. So I
Very
don't
true.
know.
It's speaking of cases, I'm going to take the opportunity to do kind of an impromptu tech and I want to talk about the case that I have on my phone. You may notice it has a MagSafe circle on the back of it. This is something that really every case manufacturer should do, and I'm specifically calling out Zag because Zag actually has like snap accessories that it makes specifically for specifically for iPhones. Like they have the snap ring and the snap adapters and like a whole bunch of other snap accessories. Zag, you really need to get on this. But anyway, this is not Zag. This is a different brand whose name escapes me, and I'm going to look it up as we talk. But so I actually, speaking of Max Weinbach, I got this recommendation from him because he was showing it off, and everyone's like, I forget what, like nobody was focused on the fact that this is a MagSafe case, and yet it was. So this is the name of the case is called Galapple. So Galapple. I don't know what that means, but anyway. So I mean, it's a clear case, and you can see it's got a nice tight cutout where the camera hump is, but it also has the snap ring built into it, which I've got. I don't know if I switched off the tab, so I don't know if this is even in frame anymore.
Oh,
but
no.
Yeah, so I've got. Can I reach it? Okay, so this is like a little. This is an anchor, charger thing, which may or may not have been a tech. I don't remember. Link in the show notes. But anyway, so the snap ring just snaps right on there, and you can't quite see it because it's just the cable isn't long enough. But here, if I do this, here. Yes, there we go. There we go.
What you're saying is, if you've got a lot of accessories for Apple stuff, then you should get this for your Samsung phone.
Or you could buy the accessories after you buy this for your Samsung phone.
And then you have it for your Apple phone if you decide to switch later on. But no, I mean seriously, the snap ring is awesome. I have a snap one of the Zag snap phone holders in my car where I just like stick it on and it magnetically charges. The only downside I'm going to say about this, and I think I don't know if this is like common to Android phones or just Android phones and magnets or something, but like if I put this on a MagSafe charger, 50% of the time it will fill up to 100% and then stop charging, and then it'll just sit there on the charger not charging, and then I'll wake up in the morning and the phone's back down to like 80% or something like that, which really irritates me. And it's happened with this. It's happened with the Zag ring snap adapters that I've put onto cases, and it's happened on multiple kinds of phones too. So like I don't know why it does that, but it's kind of irritating. But that's like my only downside. Then this case is like $15, so it's right in line with most of the cases that you're gonna buy for your phone, and less than others. And the only other downside is it took me like 2 weeks to get it because like it wasn't Prime eligible for whatever.
Right.
This is like podcast inception. You're doing a mini episode within a podcast episode.
But you know what's great about this is now I don't have to write this.
There you go.
So that's our tech. So and then I'm not gonna do the music, but anyway. So now we can go back and keep talking about the
S22
phone that we're talking about. Yeah. So, we already touched on the software. I mean, did we kind of cover everything that we wanted to cover there? I think, we covered a lot of it. Have you gotten a chance to use like the theming engines and whatnot with the S22? How's that working out for you?
So the stock theme engine, they enhanced it over the initial Android 12 release, so it actually themes more apps than just like the built-in, dialer or whatever.
Okay.
I also really like in the color picker how they now have 6 colors and like a vertical graph. I don't know if you've seen that, but versus most other manufacturers, it's like a pie graph with like 3 colors or something. It's just the way Samsung did it in this release is much better. It looks better. I feel like it's more informative as far as your color palette goes. I would love to see some more manual color options. I think that's my biggest issue with a lot of Android 12 flavors anyway. I think only Oppo and I think Motorola's upcoming skin lets you also customize the color like 100%. But, you know, for the most part, you know, most of these phones, you get like 4 choices and good luck. Change your wallpaper if you don't like it.
So you can get your benefit of the doubt. You can get those true colors for the logo on your phone, which I know everybody wants. And
that's right.
I'll drop a link to those color patterns and the color hex codes in the show notes, so that you can get the real gold and the real what is that, Cliff? It's like a brownish black, right? It's not black.
So
do you remember? It's been like 2 years.
If you were just doing the logo itself, it's probably, if you're talking CMYK, like a 90% black.
Okay.
It's it's basically a very dark gray. But then if you're looking at the album art, it's got some like some rusty gold stuff going on in there too. Yeah. So.
And by the way, side note, I just realized it's kind of our 2-year anniversary now, because
is it really?
It was March of 2020. So happy anniversary. Welcome back, Nick. And actually,
we're on season 3.
Yeah. I was gonna say, the last time I was on here, I was talking about Half-Life Alyx, which was 2 years ago. So
yeah. And I want to say, like, I released 4 episodes initially, and I want to say you were like episode 5 or 6. Like you were pretty early on.
It was pretty early, yeah.
Where you been, man?
I don't know.
Oh wait,
somewhere.
Yeah. No, that's on me. Never mind. Okay, so let's move on. Let's talk about the cameras, because you know we're already 26 minutes into this thing, so we should probably start talking about the cameras. And I haven't had a whole hell of a lot of. Here's the nice thing about my ownership of the S22 Ultra. I haven't had to review it. So I haven't been intentionally going around and like taking a whole crap load of photos with it. I've only just been doing, the photos that I would normally be taking. Like, yesterday I went to a Lego display, which was, by the way, really cool. But so I was like taking pictures of that, and I was shooting some video of that. But like otherwise, I haven't had to go out in like sub-zero temperatures and like walk around my my city town hall like I normally do. I haven't had to bribe my daughter to do any like jumping around like I normally have to. So it's been kind of nice. So Nick, since you're the only one that's actually looked at this with a reviewer's eye, I'll just go ahead and let you talk.
All right. Well, speaking of kids jumping around, right? So that is remains the biggest weak point of the camera. In my review of it on Android Central, perfect timing with the review process, right? Because my son turned 8. He had a birthday party that weekend, and all the kids were inside jumping around, and I was like, "Oh, perfect! Here we go. I'll snap some pictures of them being crazy 8-year-olds and." Let's see how it goes. And I'll get their parents to sign
disclaimers later.
That's right, exactly. I made sure to not like include a bunch of kids' faces on the review, so there's that. But I mean, the basic gist of it is if you're putting it side by side with the Pixel 6 Pro or Pixel 6 probably as well, most of the time the Pixel 6 is going to get a shot that has a clear face in it, because Google went way out of their way to make sure that was a thing. And Samsung really hasn't yet. Now, since Shaka got our review unit for the video review on Android Central, he's been testing out different things with his dogs. And he figured out that if you swipe over on the shutter button and do the burst, right? Which that's one of those things I always forget exists, because it's just so hidden. Like, who's going to remember to swipe down or over on the shutter button? It's kind of weird.
100% agree.
Yeah, I think you can change it in settings too. I have to look to be sure. But in any case, if you use the burst mode, you can pretty much always pick out a clear shot in there. But, there's that whole, now I got to go through it and I got to pick through all these pictures and find one that I like. Maybe it's not a big deal to you. But for the most part, that was where I really found the camera to be weakest.
Okay. Yeah, I agree with that, and that's like one of the more frustrating things. Like, especially for people like us who have kids. Like,
Yeah.
90 or nine, maybe not 90, but 50% of your photos are going to be of your kids, and 90% of the time the kids are getting photos taken of them. They're screwing around, they're jumping around, they're
Yeah, they
like,
don't hold still.
they're
It's
not like
uncommon.
Mona Lisa or anything. So yeah, it's that is a very, very big point of frustration. I've come to use burst mode more often than not just because of that, and that's for most phones. That's honestly not just Samsung phones, but
Right.
Samsung's implementation of burst mode, which I haven't tried, but that always felt weird to me. Like, are they had a thing. Samsung's burst mode had a thing where you like had to like, I don't know, it's like if you drag it up, it records a video, or you drag it to the side and it does burst mode or something. I don't know.
It's too complicated.
Yeah,
that's really the end of it.
It's really complicated.
I miss the days of just holding it down, and it takes like 50 pictures in a second.
Oh, that's what it is. If you hold down the button, that's when it switches to video.
Right, and that's which is weird to me. I'm like, this isn't
right.
Snapchat. I don't want to do this.
Why
is this a thing? I'll swipe over to video mode if I want to record a video. This is not that hard.
And having come from a lot of other phones, that was something I ran into, not necessarily with this phone, but with the S21 Ultra, because I hadn't used a Samsung camera app in a while, and I'm like, why is it taking video? I mean, why is it not doing the burst mode? What is going on?
Right.
Yeah. I remember specifically having to practice that gesture to get the burst mode down. And like, I think my daughter was on the trampoline at the time, and it was like, nope, that wasn't it. Keep going. Hang on. Nope, that's not it. Okay, keep going. But I mean, can we really be surprised about can we really be surprised that Samsung has bad UI when we're talking about the same company whose power button is no longer a power button? I mean, come on. it's again,
in their defense, Google is just as guilty of the power button thing. So there's that.
Google?
Yep, the Pixel 6 ships
the Pixel
too.
6, you hold the power button down and it brings up Assistant because they decided squeezing a phone was no longer good enough for something.
The difference is that Samsung defaults it to Bixby and tries to get you to walk through that setup process when you do it.
Yeah, there's that too. Yeah, for sure.
What was it? What was I said? What was it? I tweeted one time that somewhere there's a Samsung QA engineer that's looking at customer data and wondering, wondering why what is this is the most most often asked question on Bixby.
That's good. I never thought about that.
Yeah. Anyway, okay. So indoors, the camera has trouble with faces unless you go to burst mode. So important safety tip. Thanks, Egon. How about outdoors, or what about nighttime? Because I know Samsung made a big to do about nighttime, and especially video in nighttime.
Right. So I just finished up an article today on nightography, which is what they call it, versus Google's Night Sight, which, for a long time has kind of been the gold standard in the industry. I think Huawei was the only other one that really challenged them for a long time, and now they're kind of irrelevant, at least outside of China.
Sadly, yes.
Trust me, it sucks. I miss them. But I was really impressed with just the performance. In fact, I gave the S22 the crown over the Pixel 6 in nighttime. It's like a little bit better. We're not talking like, oh yeah, it's way, heads and tails better. And it depends on the situation. Like I noticed the white balance, Samsung does a way better job of white balance. For whatever reason with Google software, when you change to night mode, it like screws the color science up. I've forgotten at this point why. There is a reason for that. It's just the way they do the multi-frame capture. But yeah, Samsung nails the white balance. Detail wise, it's kind of typical traditional Samsung processing. In nighttime, it's not as vibrant, so it looks more correct. Again, with the white balance and the colors, it actually looks right. It's lacking a little bit of detail especially from the main sensor under night shots. For the most part, though, any of the telephoto shots are really, really good.
I turned my mic off. Did you guys hear that?
I did.
Oh yeah.
Oh, sorry. I guess my mic off switch doesn't work. No, keep going. You're fine. I can edit that
you're
out.
fine. telephoto shots, like, okay, so during the day, right? I'm sure everyone's seen the gajillion comparisons there are on Twitter or wherever else, right? Like, this thing is a beast in telephoto. It does a crazy good job in the day.
And major shout out to your colleague Michael Fisher. That sequence of photos on the Statue of Liberty on his review was just masterfully done.
Crazy awesome.
It was.
Yeah, I love the way he presented it too, because you pull it up, he pulls it up, whatever, in the video, and it just looks like a regular shot. And then when he zooms back out, you're like, oh my gosh.
He's like, I took it from way back here.
Yeah, it's like on a boat on the other side of the bridge. You shot from under the bridge. Is ridiculous. So crazy. Zoom wise during the day, it's nuts. You're pretty much not going to beat it. I mean, there's almost no circumstance you're going to beat it. At night though, it trades blows with the Pixel 6 Pro, which is
okay.
I feel like surprising, just because you're talking about a 10x optical lens versus a 4x on the Pixel.
Mm-hmm.
But then of course you got 10 megapixel sensor on the Galaxy versus 48 megapixel on the Pixel 6. Too many pixels in there.
Right.
So many pixels.
That's right. Anyway, so at night they trade blows. I would say that the S22 Ultra, again, maybe a slight advantage overall, but really for the most part, it's not as big of a difference as you see during the day.
So I remember from my S21 Ultra review, at night, the aperture on the 10 megapixel 10x zoom was so small that it was basically unusable at night. Has that been addressed at all in this?
Definitely. Now,
okay.
Yes and no, right? Okay,
now,
so
let's not get too hasty when we say usable. But
okay,
yeah.
So usable. Let's just start with the basics, right? Night mode, you can only go up to 10x zoom when you're in dedicated night mode.
Okay.
If you go to auto, there's no restriction. You go to 100, whatever. So it's kind of weird. It's like it decides when to use that, 10x optical sensor when you're in night mode, depending on the lighting conditions. But it's nowhere near as I guess finicky, we'll say, as the S21 Ultra was. For the most part, like I said, you're going to get a really nice shot, and you might even want to use auto if you're zooming in really far, because it does a surprisingly good job with just a quick shutter snap, and you don't have to wait for the night mode to process all that stuff too.
Yeah, I'll be honest. Half the time I forget night mode is actually a thing. So that's the kind of thing. I just want AI to kick in for me if you don't mind.
And that's fair, because it's the dedicated night mode is not even on the carousel by default. You have to go into other modes, and you have to click add, drag it over, hit done. Like, there's a lot of extra steps in there that I feel like most people will never do.
Right.
So by default, the auto mode picks night mode automatically depending on the lux level and various other things. So if you're just have it on auto and you zoom in or whatever, it's going to do its thing, or it's not going to do its thing. That's really the end of it. So there you go. I would say their software is smart enough to just keep it on auto and use it. I don't really think you need to use auto mode or night mode unless you're in a situation where you're not sure if you're going to trust the software's guidance. Then maybe put it on night mode. But for the most part, it's not necessary. Auto mode is great.
What about for like video? Because I know they talked about the automatic frame rate adjustment, which, I mean, when they mentioned that, I'm just like, oh yeah, frame rate. That probably has a lot to do with like crappy night videography.
Well, yeah. So. I mean, you look, there's so many camera sensors out there. As soon as the ISO jumps up, the frame rate just takes a nosedive.
Yeah.
So I haven't noticed any issues like that. The video on this is super, super clean at night. I know when the Pixel 6 came out, that was probably the biggest complaint I feel like I heard with the camera was, as soon as the lights go down, boy, the noise creeps way up.
Yeah. I think if I recall correctly, I want to say I noticed that as well. But
I didn't notice it at first, but I think I didn't shoot in dark enough conditions. Like, I was in the house and it was fine. Like, it looked good in the house. But it's like if you're going out to Disney at night and shooting fireworks,
Yeah,
it gets a little dicey then. But I like, one thing I was really impressed with was how good the front-facing camera was on the S22 Ultra. Typically, I mean, it's a front-facing camera. I don't care about it that much. They're all pretty much the same. I mean, there's a little bit of quality difference, but I feel like most front-facing cameras are similar enough. This was noticeably better in every lighting condition. And then their portrait mode, they have that new, I forget what they call it. The AI. The
multi-sensor, the multi-pixel thing. Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
I don't feel like scrolling through my review because it's all the way on that monitor over there or whatever.
Right. Yeah, it's way too far away.
It's too many words. It's fine.
Yeah.
That does an amazing job of identifying, like even hair. Like if you got like a little errant ear hair or something, it's gonna pick that off and not blur that thing out. Like
really, okay.
It's ridiculous how good it is.
And for a hairy guy like me, that's kind of an important thing. So, that's usually for my portrait mode shots, I'll go outside and take a couple of photos having not brushed my hair yet, just to see how it does. And usually I get like splotches. So,
and this probably will not do that, or if it does, it'll do it way less often than any other phone I've used. It's
very cool,
phenomenal.
Now from what I recall on my S21 review, the S21 FE, I recall the portrait mode being particularly good on that too. Probably not exactly the same science, but it wouldn't surprise me if it was like an early version of it, maybe that they were testing out.
Yeah, I would think so too, because that launched with Android 11.
The FE?
Oh, maybe it was 12. My bad. Yes, it was 12. Sorry.
Pretty sure it launched with 12, but
you know what it was?
It launched a week and a half before the other ones.
It's One UI 4.1.
Oh yeah,
that's that. I'm like, no, there was a difference. Yeah, that was what it was. So One UI 4 versus One UI 4.1.
You are 100% right on that one. But
sorry, I was like, what? Huh?
Have you had a chance to download and play with Expert RAW?
I used it a little bit. Yes, it's never something I'm going to use on a phone, so I didn't really spend very much time with it. But I know I have seen plenty of comments where somebody will point out, "Hey, it's a little soft. Like the image is a little soft. I wish there was a little more fine detail." And almost always the first comment is, "Well, just use RAW." Okay, yeah. Because I have time to edit all my RAW photos. Yeah,
exactly. Just use RAW and spend the next 30 minutes in Lightroom, pulling out all those details before you post it to Instagram. That's going to garbage it up anyway.
It's like I don't even look back at most of my pictures anyway. I'm definitely not spending the time to edit the ones I don't ever look at. So.
Right. I think it's nice to have that as an option, especially with the composite one that it'll do. But it's definitely not something, especially when, and I think you guys kind of made this point that the majority of the photos that you're taking are in the moment with your kids or with your pets, and you certainly aren't gonna spend the time to, open up Expert RAW and configure your the controls to get something that's decent.
Right.
And in the same point, I almost feel like the while the zoom capability is technically impressive, again, is it something you're going to use that much beyond like 10x?
So back when smartphones first started adding telephoto lenses on them, when it was like 2x or whatever, right, I was always like, okay, if I'm going to have two cameras, give me an ultra wide angle. I don't want this 2x telephoto crap. This is useless.
Uh-oh.
Now that we have 3x, 4x, 10x, whatever it is. Yes, I do find it very useful. Like I actually use it way more often than I would have ever thought I would. And I think it's because you have the capability. Mm-hmm. And then once you have that confidence of, I can zoom into that thing way over there, then you do it.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And same thing with the Lego exhibit I was at yesterday. They had barriers up so that you're not like reaching over and like, oh, look at all the Legos, I'm going to knock this over, and cause somebody to like spend 6 months rebuilding it. So having the telephoto capabilities in that particular case was really sweet because you can like zoom in and like I don't know how much Lego fanatics you guys are, but like Lego is all about details. And like the exhibit that I went to was like this big long like 20 foot by 20 foot like square table with like all these different, things set up all around it. I did like 4 laps of that thing, and I was still finding like new details on like some of these Lego sculptures that like I didn't notice on the pass before. It's like, oh, there's Doc Ock. I didn't know. I didn't see that. Right. So being able to zoom in with that, with the S22 Ultra yesterday was quite nice. So but yeah, and my go-to example is always like when your kids are at a sporting event or something like that, or a recital, and you don't want to be that one person running up to the front and like taking a picture of little Billy, like while everyone else is trying to like, hey, this is a show, can you like go sit down please? So that's always my go-to example as to like when a telephoto is truly useful. Now, while I did threaten to fight you on the 2x versus ultra wide, I will admit that 2x is not terribly useful. So like if you're gonna put in optical zoom, at least go to 3, if not 5. If you could do a 5x periscope lens, that's even better. And I mentioned to Cliff, we're gonna do it again. Here we go. When I went to Disney, I used it's kind of like an ongoing thing. I've mentioned Disney like on every single show since I got back. When I went to Disney, though, I was actually legitimately using the ultra wide camera a lot more often than I normally do, just because like you're walking along and there's like something like right in front of you and you want to take in the whole thing. So
yeah, and for me, like I said, back when 2x was the most common telephoto, I preferred the ultra wide, and I used the ultra wide a lot back then. Mm-hmm. Whereas nowadays I use the telephoto more, and I feel like the ultra wide felt a little more gimmicky in that, when we first had it, I was like, oh, look at all this scene I can capture. It's so cool. Right. And I would use it all the time, but then I slowly, that tapered off over time. Whereas as telephoto cameras got better, I started using them more and more for actual pictures. And, like you were saying with Lego, if you enjoy photography, even if it's just putting stuff on Instagram and it's not, just whatever, no big deal. Yeah. It's fun to be able to, zoom in and crop a shot, and it's really crisp, and you don't have to worry about, I can't zoom in, in post too much because then it looks like trash. Right. There's no real enhance button in real life usually. I mean, I guess you could feed it through an AI, thing. And it works sometimes, but again, that's an extra step, and nobody's gonna.
Most of the time, it looks like
at that point you might as well use RAW and start editing again.
Yeah,
it's true. Most of the time, it ends up looking like it's been through an Asian market phone beautification filter. Everything is just super soft and aliased, and it's just
right, or like it's a watercolor painting or something.
Right,
like
exactly.
It's just
modern art masterpiece.
You lose a lot in that. Now, one thing I forgot to mention on the main sensor in particular on the S22 Ultra, they did a really good job of in software eliminating a lot of the distortion that comes from the lenses. So,
cool.
I hate to keep bringing up the Pixel 6, but there's so many of these little things on the Pixel 6. When you get like this close to something, you end up having this like fringing all around the edge. And sometimes it removes it in software, but most of the time there's a lot of weird fringing. And I don't know what it is with the main lens on that camera, but it doesn't happen at all on the S22 Ultra.
Was that the Michelangelo skin on there?
Yes.
Nice. Well done.
Here.
Oh, nice.
It makes me happy that one person figured that out, because I've had several compliments. People are like, oh man, I like that case, or I like that skin. And I'll show them. And I'm like waiting for the Ninja Turtle thing, and nobody gets it. I have to say it. And they're like,
tempted.
Oh,
I was so tempted.
Yeah, I kind of see that. I'm like, ugh.
I was so tempted. I would have gone Donatello myself just because of the tech angle of it. But like Michelangelo is my spirit animal. But yeah, so I was very tempted to get that skin from D-Brand, and I just couldn't pull the trigger on it because
it's too good not to.
I got the Kylo Ren case, so how could I put a skin?
Hey, you know what? There you go. At least you got that. That works.
Exactly. So all right. So I cut off your point when a point that you were making when I mentioned Michelangelo. Has that thought left your head at this point? Should we?
I
move
think
on?
I was pretty much done. I mean,
okay.
If you're taking, it doesn't even have to be macro stuff. Just anything within a foot, especially if you take a lot of food pictures, they look way better on the S22 Ultra.
Okay.
Just
Fair
because
enough.
you don't have that distortion along the edges, you have a nice clear frame all around. It does a really good job. I almost wonder if it's because this thing has a 108 megapixel sensor and it probably just crops out the outside of it. And whatever, it doesn't have all that extra.
But does the phone look like Michelangelo? That's the question. No, it's not. No. So we actually need to kind of wrap up here. So I just want to spend like 2 minutes talking about battery life, because I know that was actually a bit of a pain point for you. I wonder if that has improved because, Samsung's adaptive battery life is supposed to be pretty good. So like, I just wanted to get your opinion on battery life for the Ultra.
It's fine.
Okay.
I'm not going to praise it or bash it. It's just fine.
Okay.
I mean, typically.
So like in my experience, because I have the what's it called? Where the snap thing, where you put the thing on the magnet thing. Because I have
MagSafe?
The MagSafe.
That's the one. I totally blanked out on the name of it. Because I have that. Because I have that, when I tend to put my phone down, I tend to put it down on a charger. And also the fact that I have like 4 wireless chargers on my desk. When I put my phone down, I tend to put it down on a wireless charger. So I have not gotten a good sense of battery life since I've owned the phone, because it's just like, it's just, my use case is so particularly weird. Like when I'm reviewing a phone, I have to like remind myself, don't put this down on a charger because you need to know how long this thing lasts. But I haven't, like I said, I haven't reviewed this phone. I haven't had to. So,
for me, I would say it gets me through a day. Okay. I typically never have an issue. It'll get very low percentage by the end of the day. I don't feel the sweat quite as much as I did with the Fold 3.
Okay.
I feel like the Fold 3's average battery life is a little bit less than this. One thing that I did notice, though, the S22 Ultra does a much better job under heavy load. So, like, if I'm playing Fortnite with my son and I play for like 2 hours, the Fold 3 is basically dead after 2 hours of a game like that. Whereas the S22 Ultra might have lost 50%.
But Fortnite on the Fold 3 is probably pretty awesome.
It's a million times better than any other phone. It is definitely my go-to mobile gaming phone. I stick it in that GameSir X2, and like I tell you what, 4:3 is the most underrated aspect ratio for gaming.
I understand. I when I had the Fold 2 for a while, I was playing like Call of Duty Mobile on it, and you could see like a whole lot of extra stuff.
Yes, you can see so much more.
My go-to gaming phone, though, is the Red Magic 7, because it's got the shoulder triggers, and that makes a very big difference for me. Because, So, okay, great. Well, you know what? I've kept you here about as long as I said I would, so I really appreciate you taking the time to come on and chat about the S22 Ultra / Note, whatever you want to call it. And so now it's time to go ahead and roll out the red carpet for you, and you can tell the folks what you have going on, and professionally or personally or whatever, how we can find you on the internet, all that good stuff.
So I pretty much only use Twitter.
Okay.
My handle on there is Guanatu. It's GWANATU. I had to think about how to spell it. That's pretty much the same handle I use on everything. So if you want to go on Instagram.
What is the story behind Guanatu, or do you want to tell it?
It was a random name I got when I played KOTOR for the first time.
Like, was that a name that you got? Like someone gave it to you, or was it one that you picked?
So Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic, back on the original Xbox or PC or whatever platform you played it on.
Sure.
Yeah, you hit. I wanted a new, like handle or whatever at that point. So I was kind of in the process of looking, and I was just going through the random name generation, and it was either exactly this or very slight variation of this. I can't. It's been too long now. I can't remember, but that's where it came from.
I only asked that because Dieter Bohn recently, when he left The Verge, he finally told people where Backlon came from.
Oh,
and I guess
I didn't see that.
and it was just a word that he created. Like it was just, it was nothing special, nothing significant. It was just a word that he created. And then he like waxed philosophical about it for 15 minutes because that's what The Verge does. But,
Peter does.
but
I'm sure in the 20 years he's had it, he's come up with a reason for it.
But no, he said it was just a name that he created for his online personality, and that was it.
There you go.
And,
yeah, I mean, that's... I guess more or less that's the same story behind mine, other than that, I effectively got it from a random name generator.
Yeah. Throwaway line from Avengers Infinity War was all words are made up. So
there you go. I like that.
All words
that is not untrue.
All words were made up at some point. So all right,
wouldn't we all be better off if we had names generated from a random name generator?
I always thought so.
Yeah.
But,
it can make life better for everybody. No?
That's why I make my wife call me Zordon the Conqueror. But anyway, all right, we should probably go because things just got a little weird. So Nick, thank you so much for coming on and telling us all about the S22 Ultra. And since this is going to be the top story, I guess I should just go ahead and do the whole shebang outro, right? Because that's how we've been doing these last few. And honestly, it's a lot easier to edit. So please subscribe. Please consider subscribing to this podcast if you enjoyed what you're hearing. If you really liked it, I would love it if you would write a review for the show. And if you want some early access action, jump onto Patreon at patreon.com/benefitofadoud. You can write to the show by visiting benefitofadoud.com/contact. I'd like to thank co-producer Cliff for all of his hard work behind the scenes and for coming on and talking with Nick about the S22 Ultra. But most of all, and as always, I would like to thank all of you for listening and for giving us the benefit of the doubt.